I'm currently in a predicament, and quite frankly, I don't know what to do. Let me start from the beginning. 5 years ago, my next-door neighbor, Charlie, or Charles, as we called him, told us something that shook the whole block. His 14-year-old son had disappeared. He reported it to the police. It was on the news, everywhere. Me and my wife felt absolutely awful. We always offered to help in any way we could. But as the years passed, and no word came, we just assumed they'd come to terms with it. That they had accepted the worst had probably happened. We never had the heart to ask if a body ever turned up. Now and then, Charles and his wife, Kathy, would invite us over for a barbecue. But they were never the same. Kathy was quiet, distant. And Charles, he seemed nervous, awkward. Which, to be honest, made sense. Fast forward to just last week. I was taking out the garbage when Charles came over and asked if he could borrow a shovel. Without hesitation, I gave him my best one. Didn't even ask why. He just said, some work in the backyard, and that he'd return it tomorrow. Then he disappeared. From one of the upstairs windows, I had a clear view of his backyard. I saw him digging. Not just a little hole, a big one. He seemed to be struggling. He is 56, after all. So, I grabbed my second shovel and headed over to help. I stepped into his yard and called his name. He looked up, startled, dropped the shovel, and rushed over to me. Asterisk, no, it's okay. I got it. Please, just leave. Asterisk, he said. I blinked at him, confused. Asterisk, what's wrong with you? It's not a big deal. Asterisk, his response. Asterisk, I will not allow you to use that shovel in my backyard. Asterisk, and then he pointed toward the gate, like I was a dog. I was so taken aback, I didn't even say anything. I just left, went back upstairs, and watched. He was still digging, at least for another half hour. Then, when he stopped, I noticed he started looking around, up toward the windows, scanning the houses, checking to see if anyone was watching. Before I could duck, he saw me. All I could do was casually walk away from the window like I hadn't seen a thing. But I knew he was up to something, and I wanted to find out what. The rest of the day, I kept checking the backyard, but he didn't come out again. I figured, yeah, he's waiting for dark. And I was right. At exactly 1:30 in the morning, I heard it. The clink of a shovel cutting into dirt. I looked out the window, but it was pitch black. So I crept outside, quietly, and looked over the fence. He was digging again. Harder this time. Loud and clear, like he didn't care who heard. Then he went back inside. That's when I did it. I climbed over the fence and stepped into his backyard. The moonlight was just enough to see a small piece of black plastic, a garbage bag, poking out from the bottom of the hole. I stared at the bag, looked at the back door, then back at the hole. I did that 3 times, deciding. Asterisk, do I look? Do I dare? Asterisk. In the end, I ran back to my yard. And I'm glad I did, because not even a minute later, he came back outside. But he didn't dig. He went off toward the other side of his house. And he didn't come back. I slipped back inside, quietly got into bed, tried not to wake my wife. First thing in the morning, I checked the window again. The hole was gone, completely filled in, like it never happened. And his SUV? It wasn't in the driveway anymore. It was parked out on the street. I don't know what happened for the rest of that night. But I've been disturbed ever since. I can't stop thinking about what might have been at the bottom of that hole. Could it have been his son's body? For all I know, he dug it up just to move whatever was buried there and dump it somewhere else. It's all speculation, I know. Call me crazy if you want to. I haven't told a soul, not even my wife. And honestly, I don't know what to do. Charles never gave me back my shovel. I'm not going to ask for it. In fact, he's been avoiding me ever since. And yesterday, something disturbing happened. I just happened to glance out the window toward Charles's house, and I caught him standing at one of his windows, staring directly into mine. The moment he realized I saw him, he pulled the blinds shut. And that was in the middle of the day. I don't know what he's thinking. I don't know what I should do. But truthfully, I'm terrified. I've lived in 3 houses in my life. 2 of them with my family, and now this one, my current house, on my own. We lived in the first house for 15 years. The second for the next 7. And then I moved out. What I'm about to tell you happened in that first home. I was 15, and we had just a few months left before we moved out for good. We never really talked to our neighbors much, especially the 2 boys who lived next door with their dad. Me and my younger brother, who was 10 at the time, had only spoken to them maybe once or twice our whole lives. As weird as that sounds, we did know their names, Eric and Todd. One day, me and my brother were outside playing basketball in the driveway. That's when Todd, one of the boys next door, came over and started a conversation. I don't remember exactly what we talked about, word for word, but I do remember the first thing he asked us. Asterisk, is it true you guys are moving? Asterisk. As the older brother, I did most of the talking. Todd looked like he was about my age. I never asked. By the end of that conversation, he invited me, and my brother, to come shoot BB guns with him and Eric by the river in the woods down the road. It was the weekend, and I didn't have any plans, so I agreed. My little brother asked if he could come too. Not assuming he was invited or anything, he just asked. Todd said, yeah, and then walked off. The next day, just before dusk, Eric and Todd rang our doorbell. We answered quickly. Our parents had no idea we were going out to shoot BB guns, and we wanted to sneak off before they asked any questions. Walking down the sidewalk with Todd and Eric was weird. They were dressed in full camo gear. Eric was carrying a heavy duffel bag that clanked with every step. Me and my brother kept exchanging looks, trying not to laugh. But once we reached the woods, things got quiet. They barely spoke a word. It hit me then. Maybe that's why we'd never really met them before. They were kids of few words. Todd dropped the bag onto the dirt and unzipped it. Eric snapped a branch clean off a tree and whipped it into the river, hard. Me and my brother looked at each other again. But this time, we weren't laughing. Todd pulled out 2 guns and handed them to us. That's when he dropped the bomb. Asterisk, they're real. Asterisk. I thought he was joking. Until Eric reached into the bag, pulled out a loaded handgun, and began firing at trees across the river. The second I realized they were serious, I was in a storm of anger, confusion, and fear. I snatched the gun from my brother's hands and shoved both weapons back into the bag. I told them, asterisk, we're not comfortable with this. We're leaving. Asterisk. Eric stopped firing. They both stared at us, half angry, half dead-eyed. As we turned to walk away, one of them shouted a curse at us. Something vile. I always had a feeling those two were bad news. This just confirmed it. Later that night, at dinner, we told our parents those boys were really weird. But we didn't mention the guns. Honestly, we were scared. I woke up in the middle of the night to a cold breeze on my face. My window was all the way open, and I felt something press up against the back of my head. I froze. Then I heard it. A whisper. Shoo. Somehow, I didn't scream. I didn't jump. I stayed calm, or as calm as anyone possibly could in that moment. Then I heard Todd's voice, barely a whisper, right behind me. He said, asterisk, if you ever tell anyone, especially my dad, about the guns or the river, I'll come back. I'll kill you and your entire family. Asterisk. I choked out a quiet, shaky, okay. He gave my head one last push with the barrel of the gun, and then slipped back out through the window. After that, every night for months, we'd catch either Todd or Eric staring into our rooms from a window across the yard. Just watching. Their behavior only got worse as our moving date got closer. One night, just a week before we left, a rock hit my window at around 1 a.m. I opened it, and there was Todd, standing in the dark, pointing a pistol up at me. I thought I was about to die. I ducked for the floor, only to hear them burst into laughter. Loud, ugly laughter. One of them shouted something, called me a expletive, expletive, and ran off. It happened again. Twice. Different nights, same thing. Harassment. Taunting. Cruelty. I couldn't think of a more perfect time to move. To get out of there. All these years later, neither I nor my brother ever told anyone the full truth. Not about the threats. Not about the guns. Nothing. But one thing I know for sure. Those 2 boys were deeply disturbed. And thank God, we got out when we did. Right now, I'm in another nightmare. And this one's still fresh. It happened just 2 weeks ago. I've always hated my neighbors. Pretty much all of them. I'm fresh out of college. Living alone for the first time. Which sounds great. Except I'm in a horrible neighborhood. It's all I could afford. On one side, I've got the party animals. Music blasting every night. On the other, the creepiest pair I've ever met. One woman in her 60s, unfriendly, distant, honestly seems like something's off about her. The other? Younger, but clearly mentally disturbed. I don't know their relationship. Sisters? Mother and daughter? Caregiver and patient? All I know is, what's happening here is worse than anything I've dealt with before. Let me know when you're ready for the next part. or if you want a full audio formatted version of all parts stitched together. Also, would you like me to begin converting this into a screenplay format with scene headings and camera notes later on? Here's your next rewritten section, now flowing naturally in vivid, immersive narration. Emotions, tone shifts, and realistic vocal cues are seamlessly woven in, perfect for human or AI voiceover, without changing your story in any way. Sometimes I'd sit out on my front porch, just trying to relax. But more than once, I'd look over at the house next door and see the older woman holding back the younger one, as she freaked out in some kind of wild, uncontrollable episode. Her arms crossed tight across her chest, rocking back and forth violently, screaming, making these strange noises. Sometimes she'd point at me, mumbling something I couldn't understand to the older woman. It was disturbing. Honestly, sometimes I'd just go back inside. It got too uncomfortable to stay out there. Anyway, that night started out like any other. I had work early the next morning, so I was planning to get to bed early. But the neighbors were making an unusual amount of noise. I could hear that deranged woman screaming, throwing a full-on tantrum, and the older one yelling back in distress. It kept going for nearly an hour. I couldn't take it anymore. I finally marched over to the house and banged on the door. The older woman answered, and without even saying hello, she barked, "Asterisk, what the hell do you want?" Asterisk. I asked, as politely as I could, if they could please try to keep the noise down. She raised her eyebrows, tilted her head downward like a disapproving parent. Clearly annoyed, I even asked. And then, the younger woman came storming into the room, screaming asterisk. "How dare you? How dare you?" Asterisk again and again. The older woman had to physically hold her back. And then, slam. She shut the door in my face. I stood there for a second, just stunned. I didn't know what had just happened. I definitely didn't accomplish anything. But at least, they finally went quiet. I went back to bed feeling frustrated, but also relieved. I could finally get some sleep. Or, so I thought. I woke up way too early. It felt like I'd only just fallen asleep. I looked at my clock. 3 a.m. I groaned and let my head fall back into the pillow. But then, I thought I heard something. It came from downstairs. I got out of bed slowly, walked to my door, and listened. Nothing. Maybe I was imagining it. I went back to bed. Barely 20 minutes later, I woke up again. Room still dark. House completely silent. I didn't know what had woken me this time. And then, I heard it. A faint sound. Close. I panicked, reached for my phone on the bedside table, fumbling to grab it, needing some light. But I didn't dare turn the flashlight on. I scanned the room, carefully, quietly, looking for any shape, any figure. Nothing. Every corner of the room was empty. No one there. Then, I heard it again. This time, I knew where it was coming from. I turned my head toward the wooden edge of my bed and saw it. A black, shadowy shape, crouched at the edge, right by the wall. I slowly tilted my phone just enough to let the screen light spill forward, and the light revealed a face. It was her, the younger woman from next door. Her eyes wide, her skin pale and sickly, her mouth opened in a violent scream. She shrieked, a sound like something not even human, like a wild animal or a vampire in pain. I screamed too. I tripped over my own feet, scrambling for the door, falling halfway. I turned to look back. She was coming toward me. I slammed the bedroom door behind me and ran downstairs, nearly slipping on the steps. When I got down, I locked the door that led upstairs, just in case she came back. And then, I called the cops. She was pounding on the door upstairs, screaming things I couldn't even understand. Words that didn't make sense. Just madness. When the police finally arrived, I told them everything, that she lived next door, and that she was completely unstable. The older woman showed up during all the commotion. She pleaded with the officers, begged them not to take her, but they told her it was policy. They had to take the younger one in, at least for the night. One of the officers asked me if I wanted to press charges. As he asked, the older woman looked right at me, and the way she stared, it was pure evil. I mean, full of hate, like she wanted to curse me to hell on the spot. I told the officer no. I didn't want to press charges. But that stare, it didn't change. They took the younger woman away in the police car. And the older one? She stood there in the yard, just watching me. 5 minutes later, I saw her get in her own car and drive off. They still live next door. I'm seriously thinking about moving. Because one thing's become very clear, that creepy older woman hates me. And the mentally disturbed one? She's not just scary, she's dangerous.